Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, son of Tarantino, Tarantino 2, the final part of my interview with a movie director. Plus, Ukraine's election and the woman who discovered that she was the daughter of the commandant of the Auschwitz death camp. What a revelation. But first, the USA, where President Obama's celebrations this week to mark 1 year in office were somewhat interrupted by a shock defeat for his Democratic Party in a Senate race in Massachusetts. America's first black president was expected to bring change, reforms, and improve race relations in the United States. Now his personal rating is around 50%, and people are asking what he's actually achieved in his first year. We're going to be discussing that in a moment, but first we're joined by the Reverend Al Sharpton, the Baptist minister, leading US civil rights activist, full-time firebrand, and a former presidential candidate. In terms of President Obama and so on, let's just begin with Massachusetts. How do you explain the setback there?
I think what we must understand is it was a special election, and special elections are always problematic because it is not what people are prepared usually or traditionally to vote. So it's a matter of who can bring their turnout. I think the Republicans, the right wing, had momentum on their side because they were able to, in a very passionate way, galvanize their base to come out and vote against the Democrats.
But at the same time, the Democrats had the backing of the legend for 40 years of the Kennedys, of Ted Kennedy.
I think that the Democrats in Massachusetts did not run a good campaign. I think it's wrongly laid at the president's feet in terms of the campaign, but of course he takes the blame because he's the incumbent president, and it tremendously affects the filibuster-proof United States Senate.
Absolutely, it does indeed. And what about in terms of, you feel, don't you, that the Republicans, as it were, stifled his ability to truly rule?
I think they did. I think that the fact that this president helped to stabilize the economy, helped to really change the global image of the United States, which was in absolute shatters under George Bush's predecessor, and then be able to bring some of the domestic agenda, health care, forward. They fought him on every turn, no matter what it was. And I think that then they turn around after fighting him vociferously saying, where's the change? Well, you were trying to block the change. And he's been able to get some things through, but they have been very obstinate and determined to try to make this president fail at the expense of the American public and the world community.
But wouldn't the opposition say the job of an opposition is to oppose?
They say that when their opponents are in power. They would tell us when Bush was in power, let's have bipartisanship, let's work together. There's some things above politics. You would think healthcare would be above politics. You would think a global exchange of ideas and global harmony would be above politics. You would think Haiti, something as critical as Haiti, you had right-wingers out there criticizing the president, saying he jumped in Haiti quicker than he did the attempted terrorist attack. They politicize everything.
And how do you think he's getting on in the area of the sort of racial divide in America? Have you seen an improvement in that in the last year?
Oh, so his election changes the climate, and a lot of the achievement of African Americans is certainly highlighted by his election. The actual on-the-ground inequality now is the challenge. I have worked with his administration on the education gap. Education Secretary Duncan and I have been able to work in a bipartisan way with Newt Gingrich, the former speaker. We've got to close the education gap between blacks and whites in the country. We've got to close the economic gap. We've got to close the gap in the criminal justice system. I see real commitment by the president on this. But the president makes it clear, I'm not a civil rights leader. That's y'all's job to help create the climate so that we can help to legislate what is right.
Do you think he took on too much in the first year?
No, I think that he tried to take on many areas that he inherited that needed immediate attention. It was not his fault that he inherited 2 wars. It was not his fault that he inherited an economy that was in tatters. It was not his fault that health care was something that 40 million Americans didn't have that really needed. So I think he took on what the job called for at the time that he inherited the reins.
As you regard him and so on, do you think he's changed at all? Is he exactly the same guy he was a year ago when he was elected?
No, I don't
or has
think...
the pressures of the job changed him a bit?
I think he's maturing into the job. I don't think anyone stays the same once they become president. I don't think any of us stay the same a year later. I think that he probably saw that there's a lot of things that you've got to deal with that you could not know till you sat in that seat. But I think he's handled it with very well, with extreme calm and balance. But I think that we've got to give more than a year for him to undo 8 years of absolute madness, as far as I'm concerned, under his predecessor.
Well, it's very good to have you with us. And what brings you to Britain at this time?
I was invited to come by the group here, Operation Black Vote, to help energize and galvanize black voters in Great Britain. There's going to be a very important general election here in May. Black voters could be the swing vote between the conservatives and the liberals. And whoever they choose, they should galvanize themselves. And I'm here to bring an appeal about making sure there's a lot of global long-term relief efforts in Haiti. I met with the Archbishop of Canterbury. I've been meeting with faith leaders. And I met with the Secretary of International Development, saying that we cannot leave Haiti when the cameras leave. There must be a permanent and long-term commitment to the redevelopment and rebuilding.
Because that really is a long-term job, unfortunately.
No question. The infrastructure's totally gone. They're going to need everybody there for a long time.
Al, thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Always great to see you, Sir David.
Great to have you with us. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Our thanks to Al Sharpton, of course. And now, to explore a little further the politics of this week's defeat, I'm joined by two veteran political hands. First, in Washington, D.C., is Democrat Congressman Dennis Kucinich. And it's a joy to welcome him back. What is your explanation of why Massachusetts went wrong, Dennis?
First, David, it's good to be with you. In Massachusetts, I think we see reflected the angst which the American people generally are feeling about the economy, about the rising unemployment, people losing their homes, their investments, their retirement security, not being able to send their children to college. This is really a time of severe economic distress in America, and I think that the people of Massachusetts were sending a message: start paying attention to things here at home, pay attention to our economy, get people back to work, and don't bind us up in a very complex healthcare piece of legislation that is incomprehensible to many in Washington, let alone across the land.
And you think that people feel that all of that is basically Obama's responsibility, although a lot of it did happen before he took office?
Well, you have to remember, when President Obama took office, we were in a period of rising unemployment. Our gross domestic product was down, median income was down. President Bush left us with $1 trillion tax cut that accelerated the wealth of America upwards. He left us with a war that was totally unnecessary, that's going to cost trillions of dollars. So it's not as if President Obama received a shiny new country all fresh and ready to be governed. He received a real difficult situation. However, the Obama administration must move quickly to create jobs, must move quickly to help save people's homes, and must move quickly to put some reins on the rapaciousness in Wall Street.
Thank you very much indeed, Dennis. And in the studio here, I'm also joined by former State Department official, direct from Pepperdine, Colleen Graffy. Colleen, that was Dennis's view on the inheritance and what he has to do. First of all, the inheritance, what do you think of what you heard?
Well, Massachusetts was a stunning defeat. We have to remember that in the last 4 presidential elections, Massachusetts has voted over 60% Democrat, and that seat, that Senate seat that Teddy Kennedy held, has, for as long as anyone can remember, has been Democrat. So the message is, if a Republican can win there, they can win anywhere. And if this Massachusetts defeat isn't a wake-up call to the Democrats, they're going to need a new alarm clock. So I think it's something that the Democrats are clearly frustrated over. It's not just the economy, it's the health care, and it can't all be blamed on Bush because they have a majority in Congress. And why isn't Congress passing this health care? It's because key Democrats are voting and viewing the same issues that the Republicans are, and are against certain aspects of the health care reform. So we have 37, 39 Democrat congressmen who voted against the health care. Otherwise, they could get it through tomorrow.
37, 39. So is the health care issue important in this situation where, at least in terms of the most recent poll, the president is struggling? I mean, is health care the major issue? Is Iraq the major issue? Is Afghanistan the major issue? Which?
You know, I would agree with my Republican friend on the other end of the line there, because it is a wake-up call for Democrats, and we better not turn the alarm clock off. But we have to realize that it takes two parties to govern effectively, and we're going to need the cooperation of the Republicans in order to move our country forward.
And in terms of Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, how much of a crisis is that?
Quite serious. I intend to bring to the Congress a bill very soon that will force a vote on Afghanistan, because Congress really hasn't been heard on that issue. It's not simply that that the war there is not winnable. It is that we're in Iraq on a war based on lies. We've extended ourselves in Afghanistan long past the time we should be there. And the incursions into Pakistan destabilize Pakistan at the same time that they drag us deeper into conflict there. The United States has to take a sharp reappraisal of our international policies with respect to military activity. We really have to start taking care of things here at home. We have to protect our borders, to be sure. We have to have stronger contributions of police and fire to make sure we have real domestic security. But we make ourselves less secure by these adventures that lead us not to stop terrorism, but to help spark it through occupations which fuel insurgencies. So I'm hopeful the president is going to take a reappraisal.
Take a reappraisal. What do you think is it a mistake to be continuing to pursue a happy outcome, whatever the right word is, outcome in Iraq, and to extend our forces in Afghanistan? Is that what an American Republican administration would have done?
Well, it's not just Republican. Of course, Obama has been backing seeing a better future for Afghanistan. And it was interesting that that Brown won in Massachusetts, whereas the Democrat, Martha Coakley, actually opposed Obama's surge for Afghanistan, and the Republican won, which shows you that the Republicans are with Obama on Afghanistan, as are the moderates, as are the independents. We've learned our lessons from walking away from failed states. We are with the Afghan people. All the polling shows that the Afghan people clearly appreciate what the United States and the international community is doing in trying to see a better future and a stable future for that country.
There you have a situation, Dennis, where many people would expect it to be the other way around, that we have Colleen being more supportive of the presidential policy on Iraq, or more particularly Afghanistan and Pakistan, than you. Where do you all stand, Dennis?
Well, I stand for the truth. There's no such thing as a humanitarian war. We're in Afghanistan as a result of a mistake. It was okay and it was right for us to strike at the Taliban training camps, and rather to strike at al-Qaeda's training camps just after 9/11. I supported that. But when we decided that we were going to camp in Afghanistan, we set in motion a strengthening of the opposition, and that's acknowledged now. We set in motion a United States destabilization of the region by our continued presence and by our willingness to expand the war on that subcontinent. This is very dangerous. First of all, David, we cannot afford it. America has gone broke with these wars. Secondly, there is no way that we're going to be able to bring democracy to Afghanistan. It's, you know, outside of Kabul, we're talking about a largely tribal nation. Third, every occupation fuels an insurgency. And as long as we're there, the insurgents are going to resist us. They don't want us in their country. And we have to start recognizing that we have things to take care of here at home. 15 million Americans are unemployed. 47 million Americans have no health insurance. 10 million Americans will lose their homes this year to foreclosure. You would think that we have things to take care of here instead of trying to pretend that we have the ability to be the policeman of the world. I'm doing everything I can to try to get America out of Iraq and Afghanistan and to work with the world community, because the burden of meeting the challenge of terrorism around the world cannot be the United States alone.
Colleen, what do you make of that eloquent, but again, almost Republican speech?
Well, he's got exactly the wrong end of the stick. America's not trying to be the world's policeman. America is actually trying to work to create a police force in Afghanistan and to work with the world community in order to build up the ability of the Afghan people to govern themselves. And when he says we were right in attacking the Taliban, what did he want to happen then? That we turn around and walk out and leave as we did in the past, which created the situation in the first place? No, we have to stay there. We have to work with the Afghan people. We have to create a transition so that you have rule of law. It's not about democracy and elections. It's about rule of law, the institutions that protect minorities, freedom of religion, the fact that women can actually, and little girls can go to school, that they can actually practice a profession. It seems sort of odd for a liberal not to want rights for women and for minorities and for the people of Afghanistan as a whole. So it's a remarkable flip not to stand with the freedoms of those people.
One last question to you both. Dennis, do you think, as people have said, and Al Sharpton said earlier, that the opposition from the Republicans has been too articulate, too strong, choking off his ability to carry his policies through? Do you believe that, Dennis, or do you think that's a sign of a good opposition?
Well, we have a two-party system, and hopefully it will function as such. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of opposition for the sake of opposition. But I will say this, that I like to focus on the Democrats and what we need to do. That's the kind of agenda the American people are waiting for, and I say that we can do that, and if the Republicans want to help, fine. But if they don't, we have enough Democrats, hopefully, to be able to do the job, and it's about time that we took the mantle of responsibility and moved forward.
Thank you both so much for that snapshot of the situation, the attitudes in America at the time. Dennis, we're grateful to you, as we always are. Colleen, we're grateful to you,
Thank you, Sir
as
David.
we always are
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you so much. Next, we go in search of justice in just a moment.